report today, and then yeah, like the base level, what did we learn?
Yeah, we were here today because the Browns had their opportunity to tell a judge why the city's lawsuit should be thrown out or at a minimum stayed and let things play out in federal court.
It's something that we've been waiting for. You and I have been talking about for weeks. Look, we just need to see both of these entities in court, and we did today. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of walk people through what they heard. So just to start, let's get to the city of Cleveland. We're going to start there. What is their argument as to why we have this in the court that we do? Let's listen and then we'll react.
$1.2 billion they are asking of Ohio taxpayers, and they don't want an Ohio court to decide whether or not an Ohio statute or an Ohio contract applies to an Ohio professional football team?
Basically, their argument in this, Alyssa, is this idea that this is a city team, a state team, a city issue, and a state issue should not be in federal court. Does that have any validity?
Yeah, they're saying this is a no-brainer. This is a statute that was passed by the Ohio legislature. It should be decided by an Ohio judge, and it's a decision that impacts residents of Ohio.
I do like that we're finally able to hear the specifics on this too. We read through the lawsuit last week or 2 weeks ago, I can't exactly remember which one, but they talk about, they being now the Browns, that the Modell law shouldn't stand, this shouldn't stand. All of this is basically a farce for a couple of reasons. So first, let's get to what they said about the Modell law, and then I want to get to the proximity portion of this as well, as far as like where this kind of stands, right? So because the Modell law is you can't move out of the city, but NFL laws say they're not really. So let's get to first how the Browns can define why it's different for them to move versus what the Modell law actually means.
It's really important to emphasize this point. That case and this case were different in the way that matters. The Modell law was passed, and everybody knows it, so that a team that tried to move away from an Ohio taxpayer-funded facility during the term of its lease, because that's what it says, has to comply with certain restrictions. That's what they did in that case. That's what Modell did. Same thing. But this is completely different, because the Haslam Sports Group has said over and over and over and over again, it will honor that lease. It will pay its rent through its expiry. It will play all of its home games throughout its contractual obligations. It will not do what Art Modell did. It will not do what Art Modell did in the sense that it will honor its contract, and it will also keep the team as the Cleveland Browns right here in the center of the Cleveland metropolitan area. The Crew wanted to move the team to Austin in the middle of the lease. Completely different. And that oughtn't be obscured. Some distinctions are little, and some distinctions are the difference. The distinction here, Your Honor, is the difference.
The NFL rules make clear that a team's home territory includes a 75-mile radius beyond the franchise city. Brook Park is less than a mile from the Cleveland city line. By playing in Brook Park, the Browns would be just one of many NFL teams that play in a suburb of their franchise city.
We bring back in legal analyst Alyssa Belli here. So we heard kind of both sides of the full argument from the Browns, at least, right? Not only are they not going against the Modell law, but they're only moving less than a mile away from city limits, which according to NFL law means they're still in the market. This is the first time we've actually heard them specifically say these parts of it. I guess your reaction on those.
Yeah, what they did with that PowerPoint, they're trying to say, hey, nobody is going to be confused if the team plays in Brook Park. Everyone knows that these are the Cleveland Browns. And also they want to make clear, again, that unlike Art Modell, who entertained moving the team with years left on the lease, the Haslams have said time and time again, we are seeing through the end of the 2028 season. This is not the same thing.
Really quickly before we get to some more sound here, the lease is important in this, right? Because they're not breaking the lease, it's just the lease expires, then they're going to move on, right?
That's their position. Now, the city today spent a good deal of time talking about how actually all of the plans and the considerations to build in Brook Park do violate the lease that the city has with the team. The city is arguing that these efforts are actually bringing about a breach of contract claim, which is a claim that only the state judge should hear.
All right, and so let's hear now from following all of these proceedings, following the laughter. You and Catherine Huntley met with some of these lawyers kind of outside of the courtroom. So let's first hear with the city's representation.
I think we made the case that Ohio is putting forward hundreds of millions of dollars and should be in Ohio court under Ohio law with an Ohio judge.
But what about the argument that you can't keep the Browns there forever?
Well, we think that the Modell law says that it's enforceable. They have to give an opportunity for a local ownership group to have the opportunity to purchase. And it's not forever, but it is for the term of the lease, and it is for that they can't violate the lease as they're doing today by negotiating.
How many people have come forward to say, hey, we'd be interested in buying the Browns?
You know, we've had a handful, but I can't really talk about them now.
All right. Look at that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just curious. I mean, obviously, here we're waiting to hear from the judge. Where do we go from here? I know you're making arguments in federal court
Yeah.
right now about jurisdiction.
Sure. So we're waiting to hear from the judge now about the motion to stay that's pending. And then we'll have a meeting with respect to our federal judge Ruiz, simply about scheduling and about starting discovery. We haven't even started discovery in the federal case, so we're still kind of way behind there. State case has really progressed a lot more quickly.
And what do you make of this argument that this is all happening too early and we shouldn't even be talking about it until they move?
Ridiculous. They are negotiating today to move. They've given us the notice to move, and we believe that they're in violation of the lease and in violation of the Modell law today.
Anything else you want the public to know about this?
I want the public to know that we are going to fight to protect the taxpayers' $500 million investment, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure the Browns are held to the lease and to the law.
Will continue to do their best they can to see their way towards a superb future. We're confident that irrespective of Judge Moore's ruling, there'll be a pathway to achieving the objectives that the Browns are seeking to achieve.
Which is a dome.
Which is a facility in Brook Park that will be useful in the way that we've described, a facility that will drive a tremendous amount of economic growth, jobs, and be useful, not just for the Browns games, but for all sorts of events. That's the plan that the team and the ownership group is pursuing.
They also raised questions about the Browns moving forward on this and then saying, well, we haven't actually said we're leaving yet, but yet you have these plans deeply entrenched in seeking funding and all of that. So, you know, how can the Browns say we're not sure we're leaving yet when they've done all this other stuff to make a path to leave?
It's the Browns have a lease to continue to play at Huntington Bank Field. They're going to honor that lease in every respect as they have done. As that lease comes up upon its termination, the Haslam Group is going to consider where it might go next and what the best home for the Browns is right here in the Cleveland area. If you have a lease that expires in June, you start thinking in March about what you're going to do next. Those are plans, they aren't decisions. And so it's something that's being pursued, but until everything's agreed, nothing's agreed.
So obviously out of court, things are a little bit more relaxed, but Alyssa, your reaction to both of those?
Yeah, the Browns are not wavering. They're so determined for the public to see that this is an investment in the future of the city. And also, they used the word copycat multiple times throughout their hearing because they filed first, and they're frustrated with the city for filing a copycat lawsuit, in their opinion, in county court, and now that's really going to delay the timeline of their plans.
Obviously, this is kind of on a clock because we're waiting for the timeline as far as when the funding is going to come, things like that. So when is this judge's decision potentially going to come down?
Yeah, so Judge Moore today did not give us an idea. She said she would take the arguments under advisement, but did not give a timeline.
Well, Spelly, legal analyst, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, and coming up after the break, we take a look at how county council is now going against the county executive, saying we got to start thinking about a future without the Browns. That in 90 seconds. Welcome back. For the last 9 months, Cuyahoga County Executive Chris Ronayne, with the backing of County Council, has been adamant that the Browns absolutely have to stay downtown, and there's no other path forward than that downtown stadium. But now it seems that backing is slowly starting to pull away. County Council admitting the writing is on the wall. The Browns are most likely moving to Brook Park, and now they're trying to figure out what comes next. Colton Molesky has more.
Well, the Cuyahoga County Council didn't hold anything back earlier this week when talking about how Chris Ronayne has handled the Browns situation up to this point. And today we heard a response from the Cuyahoga County Executive.
It just seems we're late to the party here. I know it's not your fault. Right. And we all know that, you know, the back and forth that went public was unnecessary and quite honestly juvenile.
I say to Councilman Gallagher and Councilwoman Simon, please don't throw good money after bad. Please don't throw away taxpayer dollars. Please don't take the bait and say we need to be involved when they said in a letter to me May 15th, we don't need county money.
On the heels of the state Senate passing the budget, including $600 million for the Cleveland Browns to build a new stadium in Brook Park, County Councilman Michael Gallagher aired out his thoughts on the stadium showdown at a council meeting earlier in the week.
Second largest economic development tract of land or projects in the history of the state of Ohio. And the state seems in, but we're not, because we have chosen Cleveland over Brook Park.
Ronayne is firm in his belief that the health of downtown Cleveland is good for the health of the county and has serious concerns about moving resources from downtown to Brook Park.
Poaching a resource, the stadium downtown, to build it anew in another suburb and really just transferring jobs and claiming that's economic development. That's not economic development, that is extraction.
Councilwoman Sunny Simon added in the meeting she would like to see an economic impact study on the move, calling the city of Cleveland's one-sided.
Whether we like it or not, it's happening. The state is going to give its blessing in whatever form that takes. And so we've got to be ready to look at what impact that's going to have on us.
But as everyone waits for the governor to sign the budget, Ronayne still believes this fight isn't over.
So even if the governor signs this, you still feel like the fight is on?
I would urge him to veto the $600 million investment if it crosses his desk under the single premise that this really isn't economic development. And you talk to any economist in the region, you talk to anybody who teaches college economics, you talk to anybody, this isn't economic development. This is just a shuffling of jobs from one place to the next and adding a ton of cost in terms of infrastructure. And that's
in Cleveland, Colton Molesky, 19 News.
County Council getting on board with this is music to the ears of Brook Park City Council. They obviously have been supportive of this since day one, but they are admitting it's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies. There are going to be issues that the citizens of Brook Park are going to be facing, and they address that this week during their council meeting. 19's Brittany Weir has more.
We have to make sure that we protect this asset called the Cleveland Browns.
Brook Park Mayor Edward Orcutt addressing concerns about bringing the Cleveland Browns to the city. He said he doesn't want to see the team leave Ohio like they did in 1995. That is why this multi-billion-dollar project is so important.
They're not going to invest their money on the lake. They already made that known. Did we all want to see it stay in Cleveland? We did. The county representative, obviously. You know, the mayor of Cleveland obviously wanted to keep that in downtown Cleveland. That's an asset for him. And we have to support each other as regional partners. But the reality is this. There isn't a viable solution there.
Councilman Tom Troyer telling the mayor he has talked to several people who say they will move out of Brook Park if the stadium is built, because the peaceful city that they now know will be booming with people 10 to 15 Sundays throughout the year.
It would just be nice, because I think some of the people, if they had the information and they know that they're not going to have the problems they think they're going to have, or then they come around and maybe fool when they have people saying they're going to move.
Mayor Orcutt responding by saying he presented the entire project during the State of the City a couple of weeks ago. He said he's also open to meeting with anyone who lives in Brook Park to address their concerns.
It will impact our residents. I'm not afraid to tell them that. I've said it publicly 100 times up here and out at that presentation on May 8th. We are going to be impacted by this. We're looking to have 18 to 20 major events a year.
As council goes on summer recess, some members asked if they'll need to reconvene for a special dome meeting. Mayor Orcutt did not have a definite answer, but said they are extremely close to presenting the rezoning plans for the area to the Planning Commission. Reporting, Brittany Weir, 19 News.
All right, Brittany, thanks so much. And coming up after a short break, we're going to be looking into the timeline of officially when the funding could be finalized. Plus, how do other Ohio sports teams feel about this potential funding plan? They released a statement. We take a look. And of course, if you'd like to watch any of our previous coverage of the Stadium Showdown, go ahead, scan the QR code on your screen right now. That's available at cleveland19.com. Every bit of coverage available at that QR code. We'll see you in about 90 seconds. Welcome back. We have walked you through the legal timeline as to when potentially we could see a decision by a judge. So what about the funding timeline? 19's Dan DeRose explains.
We are getting to crunch time when it comes to the state funding for the Brook Park project for the Cleveland Browns. Something is going to have to get done in about the next week, and it's going to be a big indicator as to exactly how the state's going to fund this. Right now, they are in what's called conference committees. You'll remember the House voted to issue bonds, loans against the state's credit for $600 million for the Browns project. The Senate said, no, let's use the unclaimed funds, that pot of money that's just sitting there, $600 million for the Browns. So right now, as we speak, they are hammering it out, both senators and representatives in these conference committees. Now, we expect that to come to a head early next week or middle next week. June 24th, 25th is when we could see votes come out of the conference committee. Now, let's remember, this is the entire state budget that we're talking about. It is everything: education, healthcare spending, infrastructure, and oh yeah, we are interested in following the Browns side of things. So after it comes out of the committee vote, it will have to head back to the House and the Senate, where they will vote again. Next week will be huge. We will see how the state intends to fund it. Are they going to do the loans or the unclaimed funds? Now, after they vote again, and they simply vote up or down. So next week, and when the House and the Senate have to vote again, they're either voting yes or no. There's no more amendments. There's no more resolutions that can get tacked onto that. Once they vote, it will then be sent and has to be sent to the governor's desk by June 30th. Obviously, if they vote on the 23rd, 24th, 25th, somewhere around there, it could get to the governor a little early. And that's when he will look over it and he can line item veto anything he doesn't like. Will he like the unclaimed funds plan? We know he doesn't like the idea of issuing loans and bonds against the state's credit, so he might veto that. Now, the only chance that it has after that, if the governor vetoes the whole thing, then it would have to go back to the House and the Senate, where they would need a 3/5 vote to override the governor. The Republicans do have the numbers that they could override the governor's veto, but we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. We'll have to wait until about June 30th to get that from the governor. So that's the schedule and how it stands. Next week will be a big week. We'll find out for sure how the state wants to fund the Browns project. Dan DeRose, 19 News.
Now, the funding that would go to the Browns for a new stadium would not just affect that team. If this all passes, every single professional sports team within the state of Ohio could benefit, and now we're learning they all support it. In this letter that was sent from 13 pro teams within the state to the governor and to the Senate, these pro teams say they want this done. Within that are teams like the Cavs, teams like the Guardians, teams that potentially could see an issue if the Browns would move from downtown, but then could see the benefit from getting the state funding. I want to just point out one quick part of this letter that was sent again to the Senate and to the governor. Essentially, what these teams are arguing is that if you combine the Senate's proposed funding source with the governor's allocation process, that it could provide a sustainable and flexible way to invest in Ohio sports venues to keep them competitive. They also go on to say, essentially, that if you fund these sports teams, the economic benefit would greatly outweigh the amount of money that the state is putting forward. So a lot of things starting to go the Haslam's way. County Council starting to move forward on this. Brook Park starting to move forward on this. Sports teams across Ohio starting to move forward on this. All that's left is the governor's signature on June 30th. And I know we covered a lot this week. Fortunately, we can't get to some of the questions that you have asked, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't go ahead and ask them. So go ahead, scan the QR code on your screen right now. Would love to be able to get to them in next week's episode. There's a lot that went on, a lot to cover, a lot of confusion. Again, ask us those questions. Love to be able to make more sense of what happened this week. And that is it for our latest episode of the Stadium Showdown. Thank you so much for watching. We are very, very close to that June 30th deadline to find out exactly how the funding would go to the Browns. So next week's episode will be very important, and we will see you then for the latest in what is going on in the future home of the Cleveland Browns. For now, I'm Jeff Slauson with 19 News. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.